Inflation is an unstoppable force that is unbiased in its impact. Whether rich or poor, young or old, inflation will undoubtedly affect your way of living. The last major recession was in 2008, and when we look at history, it is clear that we are overdue. Inflation rates are currently at record highs, and the signs of a recession are on the horizon. But wait, what is inflation? What causes it, and how can I protect myself from its impact? Today, we will answer Google's most asked questions to alleviate any worries and stress you might have. Number 1. What causes inflation? Investopedia defines inflation as a gradual decrease of purchasing power over time, which can happen for several reasons. However, the most common causes are what are known as demand pull, cost push, and built-in economic influences. Demand pull happens when a government offers its citizens a cash or credit stimulus. During the COVID-19 epidemic, governments worldwide provided cash assistance to businesses to pay their employees. Because of this, more money began circulating while companies supplied the same amount of goods and services. When demand exceeded supply, this caused the prices of the goods and services on offer to rise for supply to meet demand. Cost push inflation happens when the cost of the supply chains increases, resulting in distributors and wholesalers pushing these additional expenses onto the consumers and retailers. During the COVID-19 epidemic, restrictions were put in place to prevent the virus's spread. This causes production lines to incur additional expenses to meet the exact demands. These goods and services were ultimately inflated to help cover the costs. Built-in inflation happens when wages rise as a result of goods and services prices increasing. When the standard salary does not meet the living wage set by the governing authority, pressure from a country's citizens will result in wages going up to meet the new prices of goods and services. This can cause businesses to raise their prices to offset the losses they incur from the increased wages. Number 2. Why has inflation been relatively low since 1980? Inflation has hit a record high, which hasn't been seen since the 1980s. This begs the question, why has it been so low, and why is it so high now? Thankfully, both questions can be resolved with one answer. When we look at the past 40 years, the spread of global supply chains has dominated the worldwide economy. Over time, supply chain systems have become more efficient and effective. The ease of acquiring and selling goods and services increased, meaning demand seldom exceeded supply capacity. Countries like the USA began importing goods from China instead of manufacturing them themselves. The reason for this was simple. Selling those goods was more accessible and cheaper than manufacturing them. Over the past 2 years, it is easy to see why the prices of goods and services have reached an all-time high. Strict procedures and guidelines have plagued the world due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The efficiency and effectiveness of the supply chains that helped keep inflation rates so low over the past 30 years are now being forced to slow down, directly affecting the prices of goods and services worldwide. In particular, China, the world's largest exporter, suffered strict quarantine regulations. Number 3. Will prices go back down to what they were before inflation? Unfortunately, inflation is inevitable and rarely goes back down. This is known as deflation. That being said, there are instances where deflation can happen. Post-pandemic inflation has resulted in record-high inflation, which hasn't been seen since the 1980s. Governments will generally try and combat this, known as easing inflation. However, it is a slippery slope that could result in recession. Typically, a country might raise interest rates on loans to have its citizens spend less money on goods and services. This results in businesses having to reduce their prices so that supply can meet demand. However, when this is done too quickly, it can result in a recession. When we look at the 2008 global financial crisis, property interest rates were as low as 1 to 2%, with minimal entry barriers. However, the government then raised these interest rates to 8%. This caused many people to default on their loans, resulting in a nationwide and worldwide recession. So, to answer the question, will the price go back down? The answer isn't no, but it is unlikely. Number 4. How do I save money and maximize my spending when prices are so high? Saving money and investing should always be a priority when it comes to thriving financial well-being. However, that can be a difficult task when amid high inflation or a recession. Certain commodities are much more susceptible to inflation. Examples of this would be anything that derives from the agricultural industry. Think animal-related and buy-related products. You may see value in switching to a low-meat or vegetarian diet. Another commodity that can rise quickly from inflation is gas. Gas expenditure is essential for most households. However, unnecessary spending can be avoided when we are more mindful. Walking, biking, or even busing to work can help us save money when prices are high. Number 5. Is inflation bad? Standard inflation is neither good nor bad. It is just an inevitable outcome of our current financial system. How you prepare, react, and manage inflation and a recession will determine whether it is good or bad. A lot of people stand to lose money during inflation and a recession. However, a lot also stand to make money. Whether inflation is good or bad ultimately comes down to you as a person. Hyperinflation, however, is definitely a problem and can affect a country and its citizens. During hyperinflation, it is common to see prices of goods and services rise so quickly that it makes the wages of the country redundant. There are records of people in Venezuela not being able to afford the coffee they purchased by the time they have even finished it, resulting in cash being the only form of accepted currency. Number 6. How does inflation affect my purchasing power? What causes this is highly complex, but it's very simple. Imagine you have $10 in your account. With this, you can purchase a movie ticket and some popcorn. Inflation then hits, resulting in the price of a movie ticket and popcorn rising to $20. This would be doubling in price. If your wage also doubled, this wouldn't be an issue. However, if it didn't, you would be paying double the price for the exact same thing. This would mean the value of your money has halved. It would be the equivalent of having $5 to purchase the original $10 deal. This effect on purchasing power can have a lot of adverse effects when the prices of essential goods, such as groceries and petrol, go up. The citizens of a country are no longer able to provide for themselves, which can cause homelessness and unemployment rates to go up. Number 7. How do I protect myself against inflation? Inflation can benefit you if your money is in the right places. If you have a large amount of money in investments that deal in the commodities that are rising in price, the value of your assets will increase. Experts also suggest that you diversify your investments across different companies, industries, and countries. If all of your money were in oil investments during the Suez Canal crisis, you would have seen a dramatic drop in the total value of your assets. However, if you were diversified across different commodities, industries, and countries, you would have seen only a marginal drop in your overall investment portfolio. Experts also suggest being aware of interest rates. Sometimes the government will raise banking interest rates to incentivize its citizens to stop spending money. This would, in turn, help supply meet demand and lower the rate of inflation. If you have cash on hand during inflation, don't be so quick to risk it, as you may see favorable, safe returns through the banks in the short term. Number 8. Why can't the government print more money? This is a reasonable question. However, it isn't as simple as just printing money, as this can increase inflation rates. As discussed earlier on in this video, demand pull would affect inflation. Demand pull happens when there is too much demand for the current supply rate within the economy. By printing more money, we would be increasing the available cash amount without changing the supply rate of goods. This would result in a demand that outweighs the current supply lines, which would cause retailers and distributors to raise their prices to meet these demands. Inflation rates would then rise again. Number 9. Which industries or sectors does inflation tend to impact first? Inflation will never impact the economy in the same way twice. Inflation is incredibly complex and directly results from a million moving cogs within the economic machine. That being said, genuine trends tend to happen when inflation rises and during a recession. Essential goods are always in demand and tend to rise in price regardless of the impact of inflation. This is due to what is known as price elasticity. Price elasticity is simply the relative impact of an item selling when you raise the price. In the United Kingdom, Freedom Frogs went from 10 pence to 15 pence. This was a meager increase, but sales dropped enormously because the price was elastic. The item is non-essential. If you raise the price, demand will decrease. Whereas, if we look at petrol and were to increase that by 5 pence, we would only see a slight decrease in order. This is because petrol has price elasticity. When it comes to inflation, the overall impact will affect essential goods as they have a high amount of price elasticity. This means retailers can raise the prices without any real impact on their sales. Number 10. What industries take the longest to recover? There is no particular industry that suffers the most or for the longest. However, inflation tends to hit small businesses particularly hard. Small businesses are impacted because, in times of high inflation or a recession, consumers will go from mass-produced products or cheaply made products to spend less money. High-quality, niche items are non-essential and have low price elasticity. Suppliers will also feel the effects of inflation and will prioritize high-volume sales. This prioritization can also negatively impact small businesses, as their need for high amounts of goods isn't as high as large companies. As we can see, inflation is an incredibly complex and unforgiving force of nature, the same way we see a tornado or an earthquake. It is unavoidable and unbiased in who it affects. The best thing one can do to offset the pressures of inflation is to diversify their investments, decrease spending, and prioritize their income. With inflation rates so high right now, may you find solace in knowing that inflation is a normal part of life and the economy. Stay calm and stay aware.